Howdy folks, so the PlayStation 5 has been a disappointment. This generation has been a disappointment. But 2025 is the year they turn things around. I'm saying it. Just sneezed again like I always do. But there's a bright future ahead for PlayStation. That's what I want to talk about. We also need to talk about some worrying signs, some stuff they have coming out that has me worried for their future. Shows me maybe they haven't learned, but if they can nail this year, they can really run away with the console war, which, let's face it, they basically have already. And they can even improve their reputation, which has taken a big hit over this generation's lifespan. So I remember the golden days of the PlayStation 1, the PlayStation 2, and the PlayStation 4 to some degree. You know those Sony fanboys, the Sony ponies, whatever you want to call them? That was me. I was one of them for the PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 era. But then I switched to the 360. You know what happened with PlayStation 3, and everyone around me started to get 360, so of course I'm going to join my inner circle, and that's still why I primarily play Xbox to this day. Let's be clear, I do still want to be a Sony fanboy. I want to be that fanboy of this generation too. They just haven't given me any reason to do that. They haven't been better. The tough part is they don't need to be better. I wouldn't say that this generation has been much better than the PlayStation 3 generation and the debacle there, especially with the PS5 Pro pricing and all that stuff. I just think that they don't face competition though. Xbox has dropped the ball. They haven't put any pressure on. And there's a part of me that thinks, man, if Xbox just had taken the reins a little bit in the beginning of this generation and done what they needed to, they could have made Sony sweat a little, which I think is what Sony needs. I can't stop sneezing. But anyway, Sony still have no real first-party PlayStation 5 exclusives. You have Returnal, Silent Hill came out. There are some, obviously, you have Astro. There are some out there. And last year, surprisingly, was one of the first years where they've had basically more than one. It's just disappointing, and Returnal was interesting, but that's not what we expected this many years into the PlayStation 5 generation. To me, what it feels like is a dormant volcano. They're getting ready to blow. Finally, they're ready, I think. With the announcements they made last year, the new games coming up, they're getting into portable gaming. It's about time. And now that the generation is ending, of course. So, you know, you would say too little too late, but again, they haven't lost any customers, any fans, really, because where else are they going to go? Unless they go to PC gaming, of course. They've got Ghost of Yotei, they have Death Stranding 2. Those are the two big ones we immediately think of going into this year for Sony. And those are waiting in the works. And on top of that, I'm fully expecting multiple reveals for awesome new games that are coming out next year and into the next few years beyond that, leading into the next console release. So it's going to be good. I really think 2025 is going to be huge for them. And again, this is coming from not even a fanboy right now. It's someone that wants to be, and I think I see reasons to go toward that way again in the coming year. So it's clear to all of you watching out there that PlayStation has taken the lead in the console race. It's really no debate. You do have Nintendo doing some stuff, and the Switch 2 is coming out, so that's going to be competition, and we can't discount them either. It really depends on what Nintendo comes out with at their launch, but I'd say those are two different entities, two different fan bases that don't cross over that much. And I don't think that the Switch 2 will necessarily take a lot of the consumer base away from PlayStation. The one thing I do think could be interesting is if it's powerful enough, if it can run enough third-party games, the Switch 2, it could put a dent in PlayStation's portable endeavors and what they're hoping to do with portable gaming. So that's something to keep an eye on, but I feel like Switch 2 is going to stay in its lane, and it's going to be impressive, I think, but I don't think it's something Sony really needs to worry about. I know that the Switch 2 is launching with Mario Kart, but again, I don't think that Nintendo and Sony are really relevant toward each other, even though it seems like that may be a console war, but I just don't think it is. So when it comes to the coming year 2025, There's even talk of the biggest game of the year, biggest game of the century, decade, GTA 6, not necessarily coming exclusively to PlayStation, rather them having some specific marketing rights. So maybe there could be something interesting with the PlayStation 5 specific version, something like Hogwarts Legacy, when it had that very specific level in it that came way later to Xbox and PC. I do think that that's very possible, and with Hogwarts Legacy it ended up being one of the most interesting levels in the game. That's something to consider, and that's something that Sony's had a leg up on. You had Black Myth Wukong coming to them and not Xbox, so Baldur's Gate 3 taking a while to come too because of they were trying to figure out how to optimize for the Series S, and it's just Sony has this leg up on everyone in the console space that I think will definitely continue, as well as them getting Xbox exclusives weeks or months after their exclusivity is over. So it's looking good for them in that department. I still think Starfield will come to PlayStation as well. I'm recording this after Herman Hulst has been fired from his position, so they're making changes. They are aware things need to change. So you might ask, why is Sony's reputation relevant right now? Why does it matter if even if they have a bad reputation, then people aren't going to leave? Well, I do think that when it comes to outside of the console space, people might start leaving. Maybe people will prefer Steam Decks, maybe they'll prefer PCs. They'll have their own customizability. Most PlayStation games coming to PC now, I think that that's tempting for a lot of people. And I think that people will get fed up, and maybe they will go to Game Pass. Maybe they will try out other things. I do think that that reputation's important. I mean, heck, I primarily play on Xbox, like I was saying, because that's what most of my circle still plays on. Otherwise, I probably would have switched myself. One thing is important too, I don't want to ignore the cool games Xbox has coming out this year too. They have very explicitly said they no longer are going to have permanent exclusives. You know, we'll take them at their word. They've said Xbox is everything. It's going to be everything, whatever that means. So Xbox is everywhere. So they're really trying to enter the cloud gaming space and make Xbox more of an idea than just a single console. When it comes to this coming year, we have a lot of awesome games coming out. We have, Indiana Jones just came out in December. That reviewed really well. I'm excited for Avowed personally. You have South of Midnight. You have Ninja Gaiden 4. Clair Obscur Expedition 33, which I just made a video on. I think that could be the game of the year based on what I'm seeing. And you have Doom: The Dark Ages. There's just a lot of great ones coming out. You also have Fable. And so there's just a lot to be excited about for Xbox. None of these are exclusive and they're coming to PlayStation anyway. What I think is important is that Xbox as a publisher is putting pressure on Sony as a publisher, because they're blowing them out of the water right now. The Sony first parties are almost non-existent. It makes you wonder what they're doing and how much of their time they've been putting into these live service games. Now, no one's buying an Xbox this year because they know those games are coming to PlayStation and PC at some point in the future. So it's just so late in the generation too. Microsoft knows that even the best games likely wouldn't push sales. One thing I often think about is I really want to see what they do with Elder Scrolls 6, because that seems like one game that could potentially sway some people. I know they thought Starfield might be that. They thought Black Ops 6 could change some numbers with Game Pass, and it didn't have the effect that they thought. And I don't think that Elder Scrolls 6 would either, because why would I spend $500 to get an Xbox just for this one game, when if I get a PlayStation, I can get so many other games that are worth my time. All PlayStation needs to do is keep that sentiment. They need to make sure people know that they're getting their money's worth out of that console too, even if the alternatives aren't great. What PlayStation really needs here is a year that's great, independent of the failures of its competitors. That's what they're missing, and that's what I want to see out of PlayStation in 2025. A year that we look back on and we don't say something like, oof, yeah, it was okay. There were a couple good games, they won Game of the Year, that was nice, but they didn't do anything special. They had some flops. The only reason they're great is because we're looking around, what the heck was Xbox doing? They need a year where we just look back on, holy cow, Sony's 2025 that was where the phoenix rose from the ashes. And that's an important point to address too. I just was thinking about it, and Sony, as we know, just published Astro, the Game of the Year winner, and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth was also in that category. So they are still making good stuff. And Astro saved them a bit, I think, because before that, the PS5 Pro debacle was on everyone's mind. And it was a joke. And Concord earlier in the year, it was back and forth, and you had the Helldivers 2 situation where it was great, and then the PSN requirements were totally ruining the reputation of that game too. So they find a way to screw a lot of things up. I mean, Helldivers 2 is still great at its core, but the drama around it really hurt the reputation of the game. And on top of that, it was revealed that they've been working on multiple live service games. The Last of Us Online was canceled, and they have 2 more live service games coming out. And when you look back at Suicide Squad, you can't help but think that they're sweating, knowing they may have wasted a ton of money again. They're just not taking advantage of the PS5. I do recognize last year they had Silent Hill 2, which reviewed decently, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Astro Helldivers 2. There were some decent games that came out. We need games that take advantage of the PS5 because that is what we paid for, is the PlayStation 5. And they just haven't had those cutting-edge, next-gen, amazing Sony games that we're used to. They haven't had the God of War, the Horizon, the Last of Us. They haven't had those games that really set the tone for the generation. When you look back on the PlayStation 5 generation, what do you think about? I don't know. So that's why this is the year they're coming back. I think they have it in them. They're starting it off by bringing a well-liked game in Spider-Man 2 to PC, which is following a trend they've been doing for a bit now. It's something they did with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth as well. But I'm hesitant. I want to address the concerns too, because waiting behind those closed doors are 2 games that we should be concerned about. Marathon and Fairgames, with a $sign as the S. Marathon is being developed by Bungie. It's their first game that they're making under Sony as their publisher. It's worrying because Bungie does not have the best reputation either. We should be pretty worried for what they're putting out. Not only because it's a live service game, and I just think that we're moving past that era a bit. There are going to be those few that stick around, but it's sort of like battle royales in the past. People don't make them as much anymore, but there's still 1 or 2 that manage to get into the zeitgeist, or hero shooters. Marvel Rivals managed to break into the zeitgeist. But for the most part, that market's closed because we have those established games, and it's the same thing with live service games. I'm just not feeling great about it. I would consider, if they cancel either of those games, I would consider that a win for them long term. I think it's worth it for their reputation, and it shows smarts to cancel those games if they aren't confident. If they're actually confident, give it a shot. It's worth it, I guess, to try it out. The problem is with live service, you have to keep spending money. You don't put it out and say, all right, see ya. You keep going and spending money, so it's a big commitment. They've already lost fan sentiment with Concord, so people are ready to jump on this too, and that is not a good sign already. Recently, I was really happy to see this. They said that they plan to continue to release single-player games every year, which is great to hear. Nice job, fellow gamers. Our money spoke and it moved decisions. Goodbye, Concord, I say. They also have some random PS5 third-party exclusives coming that look pretty interesting. The first one I think of is Phantom Blade Zero. Some creators went out there and checked out the game early, and it reviewed really well, and it sounds like an interesting sort of Souls-like combat, but maybe Souls mixed with Devil May Cry, and I didn't quite understand what they were describing when it came to the combat. It sounds like it's looking pretty interesting. People are excited for that one, and that's coming to PlayStation, and PC. I just know that it reviewed really well, and that's something else to keep an eye on. Coming this year, everyone's also heard about Sony's intentions to buy the Elden Ring publisher. You know, if they do, let's be real, that's a win for them, but a loss for us. As we know, competition is good. It breeds innovation. and Sony being looming over the next Souls game is a bit of a scary proposition. It could mean good things for that Bloodborne sequel we're all waiting for. I also think they'll be pushing the PlayStation Portal more to be able to put PlayStation 5 games on it. That's kind of word on the street. I'm feeling like that's something that they're gonna focus on and try to get into that space a little more. They said it's actually been doing really well for them. Now, if you remember the leaks, which I tried to avoid, but I just couldn't, so a little spoiler here if you managed to avoid those. There were leaks about a Wolverine game, presumably from Insomniac, and that's their next project. That could be awesome. We trust Insomniac around here, for sure. I'm thinking we hear something about that game. There's also rumors of a Venom game, too. I don't know if I'm excited about that. I'm kind of done with the Spider-Verse for a bit. I love Spider-Man, and Venom's one of my all-time favorites, but I don't know if we need a Venom game right now. Maybe we'll do something else. Let Insomniac do something else if they were even the ones working on that Venom game. I think we just need a break from the Spider-Man franchise. I also think this is the year we see something about Cory Balrog, who's the director of the God of War series, or he was. We see something about his new game. Also expecting to see something about the next God of War game, what's going on with that series. I think we'll have some really big state of plays that are announcing great things. We have the next Naughty Dog game, which I bet we're going to see some more information on after the little reveal we got at the Game Awards. I'm really excited for it, and I don't care what gender, sex, race, whatever the protagonist is. Let's just give them a chance. Let's see if they can make a good game. Everybody was coming after Indiana Jones and the Great Circle because the diversity director or one of the cast members had a certain shirt on that set them off, and look how that game turned out. It's fine, people. Everyone needs to chill out. Let's just give this game a chance. Naughty Dog has our trust. They've earned it. So, did everyone forget about Samus Aran, Lara Croft, Zelda, Bayonetta? There aren't even that many female protagonists. And I hate to break it to you, half of the population are women, by the way. So that's just something we're going to have to face as gamers. And I know women are scary, but they're real. They're awesome. And they should be in games too. I do know that gaming is heavily split toward men, but that's no reason why we shouldn't want to play as female protagonists. I say just get over it, and let's see if we can make a good game out of it. I don't know. We as a community just need to give them a chance. So when it comes down to it, 2025 for Sony, for PlayStation specifically, is looking pretty exciting. Ghost of Yotei, Death Stranding 2, Phantom Blade Zero, all the PlayStation Portable stuff. What's going to excite me even more are the announcements, because last year we had nothing basically for single player games right until the end. I think this year is the year they take the time, they release Death Stranding 2 and Ghost of Yotei, which are two big single player games, but they release even more about their next IPs, and that is what we need from Sony. That's what we haven't had for a few years. It's just excitement, a reason to look forward. We had none of that. So that's the biggest thing for them. Get us excited, get people ready and feeling good about being a PlayStation owner. And I really think that they can do that this year. I think that it's not necessarily going to be PlayStation's best year of releases ever. What I do think it is a return to form for PlayStation. And that's all we really need. We just need them to have some sense, and we'll see what happens with the live service games. I have faith, for some reason. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Goodbye, everyone.